Hello.
Hello.
Number 4, page 4.
Yes, yes. Are you having a bad hair day?
Yeah. Yeah, I better go fix it. I tried on a shirt and I pulled up my shirt over my head.
That's what I hate also.
Yeah. Oh,
Did you see what the president of Ireland said?
no, I can't imagine with these idiots. What do you say?
Hi.
Hi.
We learned at the beginning of this parak that when you shecht a korban, it has to be lishma. And a korban that's not lishma, so by chatas and a pesach, it's possible. By the other ones, it's kosher. You can eat it, but the bailim don't credit. Minal on the bin and zvicha lishma. Where do we learn this? The Amar Kra, v'im zevach shlamim korbano. Shetei zvicha l'shem shlamim. Means the shechita has to be, when you shecht, you have to have in mind the shlamim. We're on Daled Amud Aleph, George. The Dilma Hainu Shmayu. Maybe it's just telling us the name of the korban, which is a shlamim. So the Gemara says we don't need it. Midichsiv hamakrim is dama shlamim. It says when you offer the dama shlamim, then it says hazorek is dama shlamim. You do zrika v'loksiv zevach v'hakaksiv zevach shmami no shetei zvicha l'shem shlamim. So the zevach means shchita. So it comes to teach me that the shchita, at the time you do the shchita, you need to have in mind that you're shechting it for a shlamim. Fine. Ashkechan zvicha. You brought me a proof that the shchita has to be done lishma. Shar avodot. The other processes of a korban, I've told you that there are 4. You shech the korban, somebody collects the blood from underneath the neck of the animal in a kli. That's called Kabbalah. Then you walk it over to the Mizbeach. That's called Hoylacha. And then you do Zrika. The blood is thrown on the Mizbeach. Those are the 4 avodot. And we have to get used to this, to talking about it. Shchita, Kabbalah, Hoylacha, and Zrika. So you proved to me...
Ernie, Shreifa is not part of the avodah?
No. The
Interesting.
Kohen, the Shreifa is done when you throw the limbs onto the Mizbeach, it gets burned. So
Yeah, but you would think that's part of the avodah, the whole...
once you do the Zrika, the person has the atonement. Even if it's not burnt. So the Shreifa is not ma'akev the atonement, and the Bailim get credit for their korban once they do the Zrika. Now you can eat the meat. If it's an edible korban like a chatas or an osham or a shlamim, once you do Zrika Saddam, the Bailim can now eat the meat. And there are other parts. You're right. There are other parts of the korban that get burned, but it's not ma'akev. These are the 4 primary avodot.
Okay.
So we want to know. You brought me the proof that by zvicha, by the shchita, has to be l'shem shlonim. Ashkechon zvicha, shar avodos minayim. What about the other ones? Kabbalah, Hilacha, Zrika. How do you know that when you do those activities, you have to have in mind the right korban? Maybe I'll just learn it as a binyan av, from shchita. Mal zvicha. So the Gemara says, no, we can't learn it because shchita has something stringent. For example, on the Korban Pesach, the night of Korban Pesach, when you shecht a Korban Pesach, you have to have in mind who you're shechting for. And a whole group of people would subscribe to one Korban Pesach. Now, let's say the one who does the shechita has in mind people in his group that are not allowed to eat the Korban Pesach. They're a choyle, they're a zoke, they're uncircumcised. So if he shechts l'shem, not for people who can eat, the whole shechita is possible. On the other hand, if you did Kabbalah, Hoylach, or Zrika, Shalol l'shem marchlim, it does not possible. So we see shechita has a certain stringency, so you can't learn from shechita to the others. Elo Amar Kra, HaMakriv is Dam HaShlamim. Now, according to Chachamim that we're going to learn elsewhere, that pasuk of HaMakriv refers to Kabbalah Sadam. So when it says HaMakriv is Dam HaShlamim, it should take Kabbalah L'Shem Shlam. The receiving of the blood in a kli after the shechita, it has to be done L'Shem Shlam. So the lichtav Rachmana b'Kabbalah, the leilev shechita mina. So why did we need a special limud by shechita? We could have learned it as a binyan from Kabbalah. Mishum de ikle mifrach. You know why? Because there's an aspect of Kabbalah that's unique. Ma la Kabbalah shekem psula bizarre. A non-Kohen can shecht an animal. But from Kabbalah, Hoylach, and Zrika only can be done by a Kohen. So, Mala Kabbalah came psula bizarre, and V'isha and a woman. So, but Shchita is kosher by everybody. So I had to have a limud special for Shchita and special for Kabbalah. Fine. Ashkechan b'Shchita v'Kabbalah. You showed me a proof that has to be lishma for Shchita Kabbalah. Zrika minala. Where's the source that when you zoyrek the blood on the mizbeach, there has to be l'shem korban? L'chite melelef ma'ani. Maybe I'll learn from a combination of Shchita and Kabbalah. So we say no. Malani she came to unas tzafon. By kotche kotchim, like an ola, chatas, osham, the shchita and the zrika have to be done in the north. And yeshtan b'chatas apnimios. The par helam davar shul tzibur, the par yom kippur, the various chatases that are done inside the heichel. So you see that, you have that by shchita and by Kabbalah. Masha'en came, but by zrika you don't have that. It's not only done in the north. And the various chatases that were done in the pnim were not zoyrek on the outside mizbeach. So because of that we can't learn that zrika needs lishma from a combination of shchita and Kabbalah. El adam akra hazoyrek es dam hashlamim. Shetei zrika l'shem shlamim. Okay, so we have a pasuk. Xeris hakasuk. The zrika has to be l'shem shlamim. V'lichtav rachmana b'zrika v'leilef mina. So once we find a proof, the Gemara keeps on asking the same question. If you have a proof for zrika, why did the Torah have to give me reasons for shchita and Kabbalah? Leilef mina. We could have learned to shchita and Kabbalah from zrika. And for the Gemara mishum deikel mifrach, there's an aspect of zrika that's chomer. Mal is zrika shkin chayv aleazar misa. If a non-kohen does zrika, he's chayv misa b'dei shemai. If a zar does shchita and Kabbalah, it's not misa. So you can't learn shchita and Kabbalah from zrika because zrika is more chomer. Fine. Ashkechan kulu. You have found me a source for shchita, Kabbalah, zrika. What about hoilacha minola? What about the avoda of after you receive the blood in a kli, you walk it over to the mizbeach? Maybe we would learn it from a combination of shchita, kabbalah, and zrika. No, malakulu. Those aspects are more chomer. Shekain avoda she'ef shelabatla. You must do shchita. You must do kabbalah because you got to collect all the blood in the kli. You must do zrika. However, holacha is not an absolutely needed avoda because if you happen to shech right next to the mizbeach, you don't have to walk anywhere. You can get rid of holacha, and you have 3 instead of 4 avodot. So we're back to the question: how do we know by holacha that it has to be done lishma? Ela damakra v'hikriv et hakol hamizbecha. The Amar Mar, and in analysis of this pasuk, the Amiroim said, when it says v'hikriv zu holacha evorim lakefes, this refers to schlepping the limbs of the ola to the ramp. V'tanya v'hikrivu bnei Aaron kohanim esadam. Here, hikrivu means kabbalah sadam. V'afik rachmana b'lashon holacha. They didn't use the word Kabbalah, they used the word Ikrivu. L'meimer shaylocha lo tifka mikla Kabbalah. Everything that is applies to Kabbalah applies to halacha from the same limit. The ashkechan shinui kodesh. Up until now, we've been learning that if you're shechting an ola and you have in mind a shlamim, that's a shinui kodesh. That's a change of the type of korban you're giving. And not only that, but all 4 avodot, the shchita, kabbalah, halacha, and zrika have to be with the same type of korban in mind. But we also learned if Chaim Yankel brings the korban and the kohen has in mind Shimon Aaron, not Chaim Yankel, not the owner of the korban, that's called Shinu Bailim. That also is a shalol lishma machshava that ruins the korban. And you need l'shem bailim in all of the 4 avodot as well. Where do you know it from? Amar Pinchas Beit Ravami, Amar Kra, uvasar zevach todat shlama, shetezvicha l'shem toida. So the shchita has to have in mind the tod. Imenu inu l'shinu kodesh. Now you don't need it for shinu kodesh. Nafkalan me'asam. We learned already in the previous, on the upper blood, im zevach shlamim. So we don't need it for shinu hegesh. Neu in l'shinu bailim. Freit gemara v'chihai la'ach yudasa. We need it for something else. I'm a boy l'chadetanya. Uvasar zevach todat shlamav. Abachanin oimer mishum Rabbi Eliezer. Balalamed shetoda sheshachtel l'shem shlamim ksheva. You know, a toda is a type of shlamim. It's just unique in that you bring 40 loaves with the animal, and you only eat it in 1 day as opposed to 2 days for a regular shlamim. So if you shech the toda and you had in mind shlamim ksheva. However, shlamim sheshachtel l'shem toda psula. Now, my hefresh ben zelazeh. Shetoida kruya shlamim. A toda is called a shlamim, like in our pasuk, zevach todat shlamav. But the ein shlamim kruya toida. A general shlamim is not called a toida. Now, Abba Chanin learned that you need the same bailim from this zevach todat shlama. Anan zevach kamina. We learned it from that when it says Torah zevach todat shlama, that has to be l'shem bailim. Freit Gemara v'akati meboile. That pasuk is needed for a different limud. Chatas v'asham minayin. How do we know that a chatas v'asham is only eaten for 24 hours? The day and the night, like a korban tov. Because it says, uvasar zevach todot shlomav, b'yom korbano yachel, Talmud Omer zevach. Anything that's called a zevach, it's eaten for a day and a night. So we need that pasuk. How can we use it for shinu bailim? Im kei nichtav kra uvasar todat shlamav. Why do we need zevach? My ubasar zevach todat shlamav. Why do we need the zevach before the word todat shlamav? Shmami no tarti. To teach me both halachas. Fine. Ashkechan, you showed me a proof that when you shecht, they have to have the same bailim. How do you know the same din applies for Kabbalah hoylach and zrika? Shar avodas minolam. V'chite malelef mizvicha. Maybe I'll learn it from shchita. No, malazvicha. Shekain poisel shlol shem orchlim b'pasach. Like we said, if when you shecht, you have in mind for people who can't eat the korban pesach, the whole shchita is bad. So shchita has a special chumrah. So we'll say a different limud. Nemra zvicha b'shinu kodesh. We learned that if you change the machshava from an ola to a shlomim, by shchita, it's not good. V'nemra zvicha b'shinu bailim. You've also taught me, through the psukim we learned right now, that if you shecht and you don't have the right bailim in mind, it's also possible. Ma zvicha amur b'shinu kodesh l'chalakta bein chol avodos. By shchita and shinui kodesh, we proved that there's no difference between shchita and the other avodot, i.e., Kabbalah, Hoylach, and Zrika. Av zvicha amur b'shinu bailim. This law that we learned, that when you shecht an animal, you have in mind a different bailim, and it's ruined. Lo techalik ben zvicha l'shar avodos. Same thing. There won't be a difference in halacha between the shchita and the other avodos. However, we could break that. Ikla mifrach. Ma lishinu kodesh. Shekain. There are things that don't exist by shinu bailim. Number one, psilu begufa. The goof of the korban, he's switching the name of the korban. That changed the whole quality of the korban. And yeshno ba'arba avodot. Each one of the avodot, you have to have in mind that type of korban. But shinu bailim has nothing to do with zrika. V'yesh lachar misa. If somebody inherits a korban, he's makravit even after the death of the bailim. So that person could make a mistake regarding shinu kodesh, but the bailim are not already died, so there is no shinu bailim. V'chein. By shinu kodesh, switching from a shlomim to an ola, yeshno b'tzibur k'v'yochid, would apply both to a korban tzibur and a korban yochid. But shinu bailim, who are the bailim by korban tzibur? Everybody's the bailim. So v'avagav de tarti, lav davka, even though these proofs that we just brought, they're not necessarily meduyik. Tarti miyadavka, two of them, you can be certain. That which we said that shinu kodesh is a psul in the goof. Why? Ma'ishla shinu bailam delavi psul begufo. Shinu bailam is also. Why shouldn't it be a psul begufo? Machshava ba'alma. It doesn't apply. You're going to tell me it doesn't apply to the goof of the animal. Shinu kodesh nami machshava ba'alma. When you think about an animal being a kodshim instead of an ola, it's also just a machshava. It's not a problem with the goof. Ela kiven the achshavei b'shinu kodesh pasla. Al-chanami b'shinu bailim kiven the achshavei pasla. That which we said, that only by shinu kodesh does that exist after the death of a bailim. Rav Pinchas made Rav Mary Omar yeshinu bailim gal achar misa. You could have a problem with shinu bailim even after the death of the owner. Tarti mia mifra. But you had two other kashas on that. So El Amra Vashi, Amra Kro Benirtza Lo L'Chaper Olav. The kapor, the atonement is done by the Zrikas Adam. It has to be on the person of the law chaver. It has to be the right person. We can't use that pasuk. We need it for something else. It says v'nir tzalo l'chaper alav. Rav Shimon Omer, S, that she'alav, that which he accepted on himself to be makriv. He said arei alai oila. There's a difference between if you say arei zu ola or you say arei alai ola. If you point to an animal and say arei zu ola, if that animal gets lost, you have no achrayas. But if you say arei alai ola, I bring an obligation to bring an ola. Chayv b'achrayuso, you're responsible for it. If it got lost or died, you have to bring another korban. Ve'eshe'eno olav, if he was only magish a specific animal, because he said arei zu ola, he didn't accept generally his chayvus. Eino chayv b'achrayuso. Amar Yitzchak bar Abdimi, my timer, kivan do amar harei alai oila kaman the ton lay achad fedami. It's as if he's carrying it on his shoulders, and he has to bring that specific one. So Ravashim Ivanir Tzalol Chaper Komar, we don't learn from that pasuk. Oh yeah, lo, but Ivanir Tzalol for him. So it's dafka this bailim and not somebody else. Fine. Ashkachin zvicha zrika. You prove to me that by shchita and zrika, you need l'shem bailim. Kabbalah minon, receiving the blood, how do you know there has to be l'shem bailim? V'chite melelef mizvich of the zrika, I'll learn it from those. Mal zvik of the zrika shekain avodah shechayim love bachutz. If you shech the korban outside of the zora, or do zrika outside the zora, you're chayv misa. But that's not the same if you're a makabel outside. So you can't learn from a simple binyan out from zvich and zrika. El Amar Vashi, Asya me'el nazir. We learn it from the ram that the nazir brings. The chsiv. The ayil, yasa zevach shlomim. The ayil is a shlomim. The menu in l'shinu kodesh. The nafkele me also. We already learned it out on the first Amud that we learned tonight from zevach torah shloma, that there has to be l'shem kodesh. So we don't need kodesh to name in l'shinu bailim. So this teaches us that Kabbalah has to be with the right machshava. Maybe Yasa Zevach, Yasa's klal, Zevach prat, klal prat in beklal mashma prat, Zvicha in, Shchita I need l'shem bailim. Midei achrini lo, but the other, maybe Kabbalah no. More says no. Iksiv Yasa Shlomim Zevach. I would learn like you, Kittikamrit. But it says Yaseh Zevach Shlomim. Hasha Tchsiv Yaseh Zevach Shlomim. Havale Klal She'ena Mole. It's not complete. B'chol Klal She'ena Mole Ein Dorin also B'Klal Prat. We don't learn it with a Klal Prat. Ravina Amar Lo'olam, no. Donin, you can learn a Klal Prat. But when it said Yaseh Zevach Shlomim LaHashem, Chazer uklal. We don't have a klal uprat. We have a chazer. We have a klal uprat uklal. And the Gemara will explain later. Armele Ravachim Medivs Ravina. V'halo dami klala kamola klala basra. The original klal, the initial klal is different than the second klal. Klala kama mar basios v'sulo. You need only the absolute required avodot. Shchita kabbalah lachazrika. Klala Basra is Kol Hashem. Like what Johnny said, I feel Shvicha Shirayim, whatever is left, whatever blood is left, you have to dump it. Vaktora Semer, the burning of the things. So there's other things that are not necessarily needed for the korban. So the Klal Prat is talking about two different things. So Hatan Rabbi Shmuel, Biklala Yuproti Darish Ki Haygavta. You're allowed to darshan, even if the Klal and the Prat are a little different, you can still darshan it. And therefore, how do we learn the klal upratu klal? Klal upratu klal. Because we said Yaseh is the prat, Zevach is the klal, and La Hashem is back to klal. So klal prat klal yatadan al kena prat. Ma prat shchit is mefurish avodah ve'inon lishman. It's one of the avodot, and you need to do it lishma. Av kol avodah ube'inon lishma. The other avodot as well. Kabbalah hoylach and zrika need l'shem bailim. So, if you're going to learn it from the klalu prat, ma prat mefurish avodah v'chayvin lebachutz. The detail has to be something applying only to something that if you did it outside of the azor, you're chayiv. Av kol avodah v'chayvin lebachutz. And some of them are not. So, which is shchitu zrika in, those would be included. Kabbalah v'aloch halo, you don't get misa for that. Or I could ask you something else, Rinami. Ma prat mefurish davar Torah tzafon. Right? You have to shecht and makabel in the north. And it has to be operative v'yeshna b'chatos apnimios. The chatases that are offered inside, like the Param Dover Shul Tzibur, the Par Yom Kippurim. Av kol haton tzafon v'yeshna b'chatos apnimios. Only those avodot that apply to the north and the chatas pnimim, which is shchita v'kabbalah in, but zrika lo. So we answer ikle meimer hachi v'ikle meimer hachi. You can answer like this: shkulanein v'yavoshneim. They're really equal, and both can be brought. Lishtachrina, the chada tiku b'milsa. That iboisem is zrika midravashi nafka. That zrika has to be l'shem bailim. It says v'nirtza lo l'chaper la, for him. Ashkechan el nazir. El nazir is a type of shlamim. And now we learn from that pasuk that it has to be l'shem bailim. What about other shlamim? Shar shlamim inola. Chitem and neilef me'el nazir. Maybe I'll learn from the shlamim ayil that has to be brought by the nazir in his purification. And we say mala ayil nazir ken yesh imoim damim acherim. It's not its own korban. You have to bring a chatas and an ola. So maybe you can't learn it to the other shlamim. Im kein nichtov shalmei, my shlamim l'rabas kol shlamim. So we do include all the shlamim. Ashkechan l'shlamim. You brought me the proof for the general category of shlamim. What about shar kol kodshim? What about an ola, chatas, asham? There's other korbanos. Chitem and neilef mishlamim. I'll learn it from shlamim. No, mala shlamim. There are certain stringent aspects of a shlamim. Shekain, to unin smicha. The bailim have to lean on the animal. And the sachim, you have to pour wine libations. And tnufas chazav v'shok, you have to wave the breast and the thigh. The other korbanos don't have these criteria. Ella amar kra, there's a wide-ranging pasuk. Zosa Torah la'olav la'mincha v'lachatas v'la'asham v'la'miluim l'zevach hashlam. Hekeshna kasuv l'shlamim. All of these korbanos, through a hekesh, are compared to shlamim. Ma shlamim, bein shinu kodesh, bein shinu bailim, ba'inan lishma. We painstakingly went tonight through the proofs, how you need lishma for shlamim, both for shinu kodesh and shinu bailim. And shlamim is listed with all the other korbanos in that pasuk. So the Hekesh teaches us, I've called bein shinu kodesh, bein shinu bailim, ba'inan lishma. Whether you have in mind a different owner, whether you have a different mind of korban, you need to do it lishma. Break the Gemara, ema heichi d'shachet l'chu. Normally, when you shechted, shelo lishma lifsu. The lo lishma machshava gupasala. Maybe legamre, says the Gemara. Our Mishnah said that some of them are kosher. Now that you say that you need l'shem bailim, maybe when you shecht it without the right machshava, it's going to be possible, not kosher. Amr Kra, another pasuk. Motzas vasecha tishmor vasisa kasher nadarta. That which comes out of your mouth, the way you did a neder, you have to fulfill. Right? Neder Hashem Elokecha nidava. Now, what do you mean? The Gemara doesn't understand the pasuk. Hi nidava, a neder. It's not a nidava, it's a neder. We're going to learn that the difference between neder and nidava is the achrayas. If you say arei alai ola, that's a neder. If you say arei zu oila, that's a nidava. So, but the Gemara has a different limud. Ela im kemosh nadarta asita, yei neder. If you fulfilled the korban the way you were supposed to do it completely, including the right machshava, then you were yoytze your choiva. Im lav, you weren't yoytze your choiva. You have to bring another korban, but yei nedava. But we accept it. It's not possible. We can eat it. So the Gemara wants to know, why do I need itzrich moitzes v'secha v'itzrich the zoysa toira la shlamim la oil la mincha? What do I need both? So the Gemara will tell us why I need both tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll learn at 7:15.
7:15 will be enough time to get to the share, yeah.
Yeah, it would be 30 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, by the way, I heard a very good
We-
quote. We